Hello and welcome back to Vintage Disney here on Brian's Things Are Cool. It's time once again to look back on the best television family entertainment ever made. This is my tribute to the Disney Channel, the totally awesome 80s episode. This time around I wanted to spotlight some shows and movies that seem to be lost to time. A look back on the first decade of the Disney Channel, America's Family Network. Feathered hair, leg warmers, and Pac-Man. Let's warm up our flux capacitors, jump on our DeLoreans, and head back to the 80s and see what Disney had to offer during the Me decade. We'll start things off with a fixture of any TV channel of the 80s, the game show. Between April 18, 1983 and October 25, 1989, Contraption pitted two teams of 3 kids against each other as they would compete to win the most Contraptiles by answering questions based on clips from Disney films in 5 categories: books, animals, heroes, villains, and magic. There was a red team and a blue team, but for some reason both sets of kids are wearing blue. And their own clothes at that. In each round, host Ralph Harris would ask 2 questions. Then the kids would play a game, much like the physical challenge in Nickelodeon's Double Dare. The hamster wheel kind of looks fun. As expected, there was a time limit to answer the questions, but I don't think I've ever heard someone using a loud clicker to remind the host to pick it up as he talks to kids about their interests.
What about Mona Lisa? How did he get his name?
Well, we got him when we thought it was a cute name.
And does he answer to just Mona or Lisa, or what do you call him just for short?
Mona.
Do any tricks?
No.
By the end, whichever team had the most Contraptiles won the grand prize, which included a typewriter. But both teams would get some sort of prize, which were generally Disney-produced products, including a Mickey Mouse tennis racket. The set is probably more entertaining than the game, but it certainly lasted a good amount of time. It's not the all-out insanity of Double Dare, but if you're looking for something a bit more restrained with some clips from classic Disney films, Contraption may just be for you. With the launch of the channel in 1983 came You and Me, Kid, a show that helped new parents with ways to interact with their toddlers. The show was hosted by Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, radio personality, and voice of the bug in the Raid commercials, Sonny Melendrez. Whoa, what's with his eyes? From the first round of lively exercises in the Let's Go opening, the little mini-plays presented during the You and Me Theater segment featuring the You and Me players, who seemed to dress in the same store as Mork from Ork, a chat with celebrities and their kids called Famous and a Half, to the closing song Loving Together, Living Together. You and Me Kid was there to help create a bond between young kids and their parents. Though I do have to question this logic.
Yeah, but what if a worm was able to stand up? What would it look like? Would it wiggle around? What if it was a wiggly worm? Yeah, now stand up and do that. Can you do that too, HC? Yeah. Now, what if Sometimes. Oh, yeah, that's right. Look at that. That's exactly what worms do. As a matter of fact, how would you like to have a worm race? This would be fun. Okay, get down like Kelly was. Everybody right down there. You at home, too, next to your partners.
Why did you tell the kids to act like a worm standing up if you were just going to make them lay down for the race? You're confusing the hell out of these kids. The You and Me Kid players included Mitchell Young Evans. Evans would go on to be the guy in the suit for the character Fran on Jim Henson's Dinosaurs on ABC. I don't think a child and parent bond can particularly be taught through a TV show, but there's no bad lessons here, and it would certainly entertain the toddler demographic. What else can you say but...
Just you and me, kid, we're quite a pair.
With the Epcot Center theme park only a few months old at that point, Disney decided to dedicate 3 programs on the channel to the new park. Much like Walt used his TV series Disneyland to promote and finance his park of the same name, the thought was these programs would serve as a great way to promote Epcot. The first of these programs was to be Dream Finders, an hour-long weekly show featuring the Dream Finder from Epcot's Figment ride. Despite a magazine ad promoting the upcoming show, the series was never produced. Next, there was Epcot, America, America, which was a man-on-the-street style interview show with normal people being asked their opinions on a variety of issues affecting the country. Then there was Epcot Magazine. Running hour-long episodes throughout the week with a half-hour evening edition and a full-hour weekly wrap-up on the weekends, the show was hosted by Michael Young and a celebrity co-host that would vary from episode to episode. Young viewers could even take the Dr. Joyce Brothers back-to-school homework quiz. How could you possibly pass up such entertainment? In its early days, the Epcot Park offered guests a fascinating look into the future with attractions like Communicore and later Innoventions. The show starts off okay with a look at the world of robotics, correctly predicting a future where we rely on them more and more. Unfortunately, ours aren't cool robots that look like the one in Revenge of the Nerds. Each show would present news segments on entertainment, art, fashion, food, and travel.
Stickers from different hotels and wondered what you're going to do with them. Well, I finally came up with the idea that I want to use with mine. I found this old steamer trunk made in the 1920s, and I'm putting all the labels that I've got all over it. It's much too heavy to use today. It weighs a ton. You'll break your back carrying this from airport to airport. But then once I've got all the stickers on, we're going to lacquer it. I'm going to put it on a little stand, and I think it'll make a great coffee table.
Help Yourself diet plan, the one that worked for me. And I found out something very interesting. The only way you're going to get the fat off and keep the fat off is to know what you're doing when you're in a supermarket. Now, I explain a lot of different things in my books. And one chapter is devoted to the 10 most dangerous things to put in your mouth. Well, in my opinion,
one of the leaders in the gourmet food importing business is a company called Flying Foods International. Founded 2 years ago by these young men.
Oh my God, it's never gonna end.
The company imports 58 varieties of seafood and 90 varieties of produce and grosses over $60,000 a week. With branch offices in Boston, Philadelphia, Houston, and Los Angeles. It appears
1984 brought new leadership to the Disney company, and with it, fresh eyes. Eyes that quickly saw that despite high subscription rates for the channel in its first year, most people were only subscribing for a couple months and canceling. The Disney Channel needed more exciting programs, and it's easy to see why Epcot Magazine is little more than a footnote in the channel's long history. One of the many things missing from the Disney Channel of today is a respect for the company's history. The men and women who shaped Disney into what it is had truly inspiring stories, and you could learn about them all on Disney Family Album. From June 9th, 1984 to January 2nd, 1986, Disney Family Album offered a half-hour documentary series hosted by Buddy Ebsen, with episodes honoring such luminaries as Walt's 9 Old Men, the Sherman Brothers, Annette Funicello, Fess Parker, Clarence Nash, the voice of Donald Duck, and more. With a family-friendly half-hour format, it's to be expected that it wouldn't do a deep dive into the lives of these legends, but each episode treats its subject with the respect they rightly deserve. As time goes by, a lot of great stuff can get buried, but I think a lot of younger generations would really enjoy learning about what came before. It was through reruns of this and the Disney Channel's daily short series, A Disney Moment, that I found out about many of these icons. In the Annette episode, there's an intriguing interview at the end showing the next generation discovering Annette and her music.
At this new wave radio station in Los Angeles, Annette's music is still in demand thanks to disc jockey Rodney Bingenheimer.
Well, her music is the best, I say. In fact, I play her on my radio show on Carol Q. In fact, that's how the whole thing started. I started playing cuts from her earlier albums, like Swingin' and Surfing, from the Beach Party album, and then Jamaica Ska off of the Bikini Beach album. And then I started playing like Indian Giver by Annette, which is kind of an Adam and the Ants sound. And I got tons of phone calls, requests off the hook, you wouldn't believe.
Whether it be for nostalgia or curiosity, open the Disney Family album and discover the stories of the people who started it all. What would a look back on the Disney Channel of the 1980s be without the most 80s thing ever? This is Videopolis. In the age of the music video, teen sex comedies, and totally tubular fashion, teen culture was an untapped market for Disney. When then new CEO Michael Eisner took over in 1984, he set out to revamp not just the film and television division, but the theme parks as well. He came in at a rough time for Disney, and he knew that if they were to survive, he'd have to think outside the box. On a trip with his family to Disneyland, Eisner quickly realized there was very little of interest to his teenage son. After finding that many of his planned thrill rides would take longer than he thought, Eisner knew he needed something quick that could bring in the teen demographic. Eisner's big idea of a dance club became Videopolis, which only took 120 days from development to opening day in 1985. Despite controversies ranging from teenagers using the club's restrooms as hookup spots, gang violence, and a discrimination lawsuit, the club was a massive success. So much so that by 1987, it was given its very own show on the Disney Channel. The series Videopolis was hosted by Randy Hamilton, who was joined by Videopolis regulars including a pre-AC Slater Mario Lopez. The show would also see famous music acts like Debbie Gibson, New Kids on the Block, Tiffany, New Edition, Menudo, Pebbles, Janet Jackson, The Jets, and many others, giving the kids a chance to interact with big stars. The show ran until 1989, with a spin-off starting in 1987 that ran once a month called Videopolis Star Tracks, which followed musicians on and off the stage. Star Tracks ended its run in 1990. In 1989, Disneyland announced they would be closing the dance club to use the stage for a tribute to Walt Disney entitled One Man's Dream. Videopolis East in Walt Disney World's Pleasure Island would close as well, shortly after a stabbing incident. Looking past any scandal, Videopolis was the place to be for teens living in the Disneyland area in the 1980s, and the rest of us watched it all go down on the Disney Channel. I'm going to the top, Videopolis. Gonna make you bop, Videopolis. 20 years have passed since her last appearance in a Disney production, 1965's The Monkey's Uncle, but America's favorite girl next door, Annette Funicello, is back in Lots of Luck. Originally airing on the Disney Channel on February 3rd, 1985, Lots of Luck tells the story of Frank, played by Martin Mull, and his wife Julie, played by Annette, who are really struggling to make ends meet. They think coming into some money would change things for the better. So, Julie heads down to the local newsstand and buys a lottery ticket. All the numbers match, and Julie, Frank, and family, including their daughter Cindy, played by Growing Pains Tracy Gold, soon find out being rich isn't what it's cracked up to be. After the lottery win, the whole family goes on a winning streak. winning contests and raffle drawings at work, which turns off old friends, and seemingly causes the whole town to show up at their door with outstretched hands. The family must learn to stay grounded and discover what really matters. The film is your typical antiqued family comedy of the characters finding out what really matters, but I guess because I've seen this trope in these type of films so much, it becomes comforting, and you do root for these characters. I've always really liked Martin Mull, going back to watching reruns of Fernwood Tonight on Nick at Night when I was a kid. He's funny and serviceable in the dad role. Annette is, well, Annette. I don't think anyone in the world could dislike her. The supporting cast features some surprises like Fred Willard and Vincent Chiavelli, and teaming Annette up again with fellow Mouseketeer Lonnie Burr as Sid, the owner of the newsstand, is a nice little nod. While we only know the friends of Julie and Frank briefly before the lottery win, I do feel them distancing themselves from their supposed friends out of jealousy is a little strange, especially with its "everything is fine" ending. But it gets the plot moving. The period between Walt's death in 1966 and the Disney Renaissance starting in 1989 is often called the "what would Walt do" period. This was when not many chances were taken and the films felt dated on arrival. Lots of Luck is very much from this period, but it's a nice little throwback. It's an overlooked film, but if you're in the right mood, offers $1 million worth of entertainment. Disney remakes of classic animated films have mostly been terrible, but there was a time in the late 80s, early 90s where they were remaking their classic live-action films, and these fared a bit differently. There was a new Davy Crockett, this time around with Johnny Cash, a rather disregarded 1995 remake of Freaky Friday featuring Shelley Long, and then there was The Absent-Minded Professor. Most people only remember the 1997 remake with Robin Williams, Flubber. But in 1988, there was a retelling featuring Night Court's Harry Anderson that even got its own sequel in 1989. On November 27, 1988, the first of these two films aired, starring Anderson as Professor Henry Crawford. Professor Brainerd of the original film has since died, and Professor Crawford lives in his old house. Crawford, like Brainerd before him, works at Medfield College. Despite him being a different professor, this first film is a direct remake of the original film, but slightly updated for the 80s. Professor Crawford has invented a computer program called Albert, an avatar of Albert Einstein, to help him stay on top of his responsibilities and remember appointments, which of course he ignores, missing an important date with his girlfriend, just like in the first film. It's okay though. Albert has discovered all of Professor Brainerd's files, meaning Professor Crawford rediscovers Flubber. Albert even suggests Crawford use the Flubber to fly an old Model T Brainerd also left behind. They even recreate the scene where the professor uses the flying car to fly atop the car of a rival suitor for his girlfriend, then bumping his roof. The scene is a little too close to the original, but they do include one of the Disney company's hidden Mickeys. When it came time for a sequel, instead of simply remaking the original sequel, Son of Flubber, the Disney Channel decided to give us an all-new absent-minded adventure with The Absent-Minded Professor Trading Places. On February 26, 1989, Professor Crawford is back. Between films, he has married his girlfriend Ellen and has been doing more experiments with Flubber. By simply baking Flubber in an urn for 24 hours, it makes it impervious to liquids. Thus, Crawford christens this new discovery Flass, flying glass. This doesn't come into play much until the end. The main plot revolves around Crawford's friend, played by Ed Begley Jr., who works at a defense firm and discovers his fellow employees may be unknowingly helping the higher-ups build a devastating new military weapon. Now him and Crawford must find a way to save the day. Plot-wise, it's a little close to Val Kilmer's Real Genius from the same year, but it does take the characters in a new direction. Flubber is used in a less questionable way, like cheating at basketball in the original film, and despite very similar plotting to the original, Professor Crawford is much different than Professor Brainerd. Most of that is due to the casting of Harry Anderson, who had more of a background in comedy than Fred MacMurray, and adds energy to the role. Not many other standouts in the cast, but there is a very young Stephen Dorff playing the bully in the first film. It's not the classic film we all know and love, but it's a new adventure with a lot of the same spirit. Or flubber. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my 4th tribute to the Disney Channel. If you want to be kept up to date as to when I release a new video, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to be notified, hit that bell as well. I'm Brian, and I hope you had a totally awesome time.